Hello. We are making an unexpected pit stop back into the Shadow of Hakuho. Self-throw.
Throw the salt, get in the ring. Welcome to the Dohyo.
Hello and welcome back to the Dohyo here on Mr. J-Wag's channel. Yes, we are diving back into the Shadow of Hakuho, and no, this is not the recap episode I have promised you. That will come after the January Basho. But I have been noticing, as I've been going into the year-end 2022 sort of story of Sumo things, is that the issues we're having right now in Sumo, I talked about it a little bit in the November recap, but the primary issue seems to be the top of the tree, the head of the pyramid, the top ranks of Sumo seem to be underachieving rather drastically right now. And now the Shadow of Hakuho, of course, is an alternate timeline where Hakuho never existed, so we award those yusho to who would have deserved them in Hakuho's absence. But the end of Hakuho's career was not just like, it wasn't like a Tamino Umi-esque ending, to be a little morbid about it. Despite what we came to expect at the end of Hakuho's career, Hakuho did not go Kyujo that often. He went Kyujo 20 times out of 122 basho. So yeah, he averaged missing 1 per 6 over his entire career. But almost all of them, 17 of the 20, are crammed into this last 5-year period, 2017 to 2021. So this episode is going to be an examination of those last 4 or 5 years of Hakuho's career, because he was missing over half the tournaments at that time. So I want to see how that slow disengagement of the Shadow of Hakuho might have affected the future, now present, of Sumo. I mean, how big and thick does a shadow have to be to extend an extra year after Intai? That's big and thick. Wait. So what do the last 5 years of Hakuho's career for Shadow? Now, in sort of a converse of the Shadow of Hakuho, let's look into the Kyujo of Hakuho to see who has actually been excelling in his absence. Now, the first one, back in 06, that was an easy one. Asashoryu was pretty much winning every yusho that was not nailed down at that time. So yeah, young Ozeki Hakuho goes Kyujo. Don't worry, Asashoryu got this. What we're going to see in these first few yusho is that, well, even when Hakuho's not there, there are other dominant wrestlers there to sort of pick up any of the strays that Hakuho isn't there for. We do see, as we have seen in the Shadow of Hakuho, that when there is not a super alpha dog like Hakuho, sometimes we get those Maegashira victories coming in that we don't expect so much. Not many Tokushoryu type surprises, but if you've noticed, we've had a lot of Maegashira yusho recently. So the next Kyujo, 2015, that was Kakuryu. The 2016 was the Goeido Zensho. So we have our first non-Yokozuna who is sort of awarded by this. And again, this was Goeido's only yusho, and it happened in the absence of Hakuho. Then we have 2017, the year of 4 Yokozuna. So, Hakuho ended up losing to Kisano Sato in the tournament where he got promoted from Ozeki to Yokozuna. But in that very next tournament, the first Yokozuna Kisano Sato tournament, Hakuho was not there, and that was the tournament where Kisano Sato hurt his shoulder, beat Terunofuji twice on the last day. A very exciting tournament, but also the last time we really saw A+ sumo out of Kisano Sato. In September of that year, also a very memorable one, our 4 Yokozuna. All of them call out Kyujo, and then we have Harumafuji there, who's working on basically one arm, has a gigantic comeback against Goeido, and ends up winning on the final day 11-4. A fascinating yusho, and one of my favorite basho of all time to watch. So, 2017, a transitional year. Hakuho is still wrestling well, and the people who are sort of picking up the slack from him are Yokozuna. 2018 is coming right up, and the first yusho goes to Tochinoshin. Remember that one? Yes, Hakuho was gone for that one. And Hakuho was out for March of that year. Kakuryu picks up his second sort of Hakuho Kyujo tournament in there. Skip to Nagoya of that year, and we have Mitakeumi's first yusho. And then to November of that year, Takakeisho's first yusho. Are you noticing a bit of a pattern? Now in 2019, we started with Tamawashi for his first. We had no idea at the time. We thought that was going to be the only, but had a great tournament. Then Asanoyama, and then we finished out with Mitakeyumi. So that accounts for both of Mitakeyumi's yusho during Hakuho's career, and Asanoyama's only yusho. Though a very important point to be made about Tamawashi. Tamawashi, of all of these Kyujos, is the only one who faced Hakuho head-to-head during the yusho, and then Hakuho went Kyujo after that one. So Tamawashi, he gets a special place on this list. He faced and defeated Hakuho for his yusho, which none of these people did. And in Tamawashi's recent September yusho, he also beat Yokozuna Terunofuji before he went Kyujo. So in both of Tamawashi's yusho, he beat the dominant Yokozuna on the Dohyo. Let's hear it for Tamawashi. Now 2020, Hakuho missed 4 tournaments, and the first one was Tokushoryu Surprise! Oh, what a fun championship that was. But yeah, Hakuho wasn't there. So then, after the Tokushoryu Surprise, we had Ghost Basho, with Hakuho came back and won, and then Cancelled Basho, which nobody won. To finish out the year, it was Terunofuji, Shodai, and Takakeisho. So that accounts for Shodai's yusho and both of Takakeisho's. Now, 2021 was a little bit less exciting. We started off, of course, with a January surprise in Daieisho. I mean, if we're going to have a Tamawashi and we're going to have an Abi, why not a Daieisho yusho? And then the rest of that year, before he went Intai, were Terunofuji victories, broken up, of course, with the aforementioned final Hakuho Zensho. So of the Hakuho Kyujos, Terunofuji won 4 of them, so he obviously benefits the most, but also Takakeisho, Mitakeyumi, and Kakuryu each got 2. Now those of you who've been following the Shadow of Hakuho may notice that these list of Kyujo champions are very similar, and in fact identical in some cases, to the people who won Shadow Yusho during this time. Kakuryu, Goeido, Terunofuji, oh yeah, those guys. We have Asanoyama getting one at Komusubi here. We have extra Maegashira victories from Takakeisho back at Maegashira 1. Ichinojo would have had another Maegashira championship there. We'll be talking about him in future episodes. But the other point to bring up is that every single one of our recent Ozeki, going back through Goeido, so all of our post-Kota Shogiku Ozeki, all of their yusho came during a Hakuho Kyujo. Now, to be absolutely fair, not many Ozeki won championships while beating Hakuho. Baruto's championship, lost to Hakuho. Kota Mitsuki's championship, he won before his Ozeki tenure, before Hakuho was really in Makuuchi. So the only 2 Ozeki who beat Hakuho on the way to their yusho were Kota Woshu and Kota Shogiku. If we look down at all of the Ozeki who sort of had their primes during Hakuho, you will see that there isn't a lot of difference in the win ratios. I mean, Kota Woshu and Kota Mitsuki were already established, so it makes sense that they would have a few more wins because they got Hakuho before he was Hakuho. But yeah, all the other Ozeki seem to have a lot of trouble with him too. In fact, once we get past those 2 Kotos, the best record we have against Hakuho is most recent Ozeki, Mitakeyumi, with a 20% win rate. And as for Hakuho, if we look at his late Kyujos, he mostly stuck around only if he was going to win. As we said, he had 17 Kyujo in the last 5 years of his career, and he won 8 of them. In fact, from 2018 to now, we've only had 4 yusho that were won by non-Yokozunas, where a Yokozuna fought all 15 days. Any Yokozuna. 14 of the 29 basho in that time period have been Nokozuna basho. In fact, if we go from Ghost Basho, March 2020, to Nagoya 2021, which were Hakuho's last 2 championships, there were no Yokozunas finishing any tournament between those 2. None. I mean, even at the end of Hakuho's career, he was something to be reckoned with. Quick sidebar. So yeah, I've just been looking at a lot of charts of just the last chunk of Hakuho's career. And I've been wondering, how much can we take away from Hakuho's greatness before he ceases to become a top-level Yokozuna? It's like the famous Bill James quote about baseballer Rickey Henderson. You could cut him in half and you'd have 2 Hall of Famers. Now, if we just go to 2015, when he started going yusho again after the very first one, yes, he is clearly an upper-level Pantheon Rikishi from 2015 to 2021. That's 13 yusho. He's doing really well. That would put him in the top 10 Rikishi of all time, hands down. Now, if we start at 2017, he ends up with 8 yusho, a very respectable amount, not quite elite, but 8 ties him with Hokuto Umi, gets him between the 7s and the 9s, some excellent Rikishi. After all, Terunofuji's only got 7 so far. Harumafuji got 9. All of those are on the above-average Yokozuna list. I mean, the real story would be a Yokozuna going Kyujo 17 times and them allowing it because he keeps coming back and winning a Zensho every year. That'd be a really cool timeline. Now, if you want to take one more year off, because that was the transition year, 2018 knocks him down to 5 yusho, which puts him, I say, squarely in the middle of Yokozuna. I mean, who in this current Banzake do you think would have the potential to get 5 yusho with 3 of them Zensho? So yeah, we can cut about a decade and a half out of Hakuho's career, and he's still one of the greatest of all time. Celebrate Hakuho, yada yada yada. Quick sidebar. Now, unfortunately, our current Yokozuna, Terunofuji, seems to have picked up the Kyujo bug, not entirely unexpectedly. I mean, we all can see the raps. And as I mentioned before, we've had a lot of no Yokozuna tournaments recently. The question I have is, does the presence of Hakuho continue to work in sort of the minds of the people who he dominated up until this point? We still have a number of Rikishi at the top of the Banzake who still remember having to face Hakuho and losing to Hakuho for years. The current story of Sumo is that the top ranks are very much underwhelming us right now, with the exception of Takakeisho. So we have to go back and figure out what made Hakuho so great. And if we look back to the Haku Butte, I mentioned that one of the major things that gave him that extra Hakuho gear that no one else had is that he sharpened his tools against Asa Shoryu, one of the greatest of all time. Then we have the next step of Great Ozeki and Yokozuna, Haramafuji, Kiseno Sato, Kakuryu. All of them would have been close to 10-win Yokozuna in the absence of Hakuho. They sharpened their tools against Hakuho, making them amazing. And then Hakuho sort of outlasted all of them, but since 2018, that next level, they do not appear to have been sharpened. They appear to have in fact been sort of ground down and broken by the consistent presence of Hakuho. They never had their own chance in the spotlight outside of the shadow before their bodies started turning on them. It has been sort of a greatness of the gaps where these Ozeki are sort of thriving, where cracks in Hakuho have allowed them to sort of peek out of the pavement and grow. I'm really getting into some metaphors today. So yes, I'm reminded of The Never-Ending Story, an amazing novel by Michael Ende, but also a wonderful movie from my childhood. There was a second one, but we don't talk about that. Now, this moment comes at the end of the first movie and right in the middle of the book. If you've never read the book, read it. It's amazing. Just read it. Our hero, Bastian, has come to what he thinks is the end of the journey. All of Fantastica, or Fantasia, depending on if you read it or see the movie. All of it has been destroyed, and the Empress Moonchild presents Bastian with the last piece of dust from her kingdom and tells him to wish and make his own story, because all the other ones have ended. What if the story of Hakuho has been so great and so all-consuming, and the gravity of this legend has finally collapsed on itself, creating a black hole which sort of doesn't allow other beams of light to shift out? Do we have to wait, in fact, for that entire shadow to pass, so the next generation, Hoshoryu, Kotonowaka, Oshoma, Kinboza, Natami Fuji, this next generation that will not have their greatness defined in opposition to Hakuho, directly anyway, historically, always. It may just be time for Hoshoryu and the next generation to pick up this speck of dust from the past and make their own story. Thank you for joining us on this non-traditional Shadow of Hakuho episode. We still have a lot more before the end of the year. We're going to have our year-end review, which you are not going to want to miss. And of course, predictions for the January Basho. So stay tuned, stay safe, stay strong, stay healthy, and I will see you next time on the Dohyo.